and 2 terms as an ambassador of the European Union, first to Liberia and then to Somalia. There is much more, but this is already something many diplomats can just dream of. So she has a very personal experience on these matters. I think it's great that we can have this discussion at the moment when the geopolitical situation is quite concerning. We all share these concerns, and I think we have many common views, but also in some aspects we might disagree, but it's still important that we have this discussion. And therefore, I hope it will be a very interesting discussion. We'll have another round of Central Asian experts later, and we will go home all with enhanced understanding of this very important topic. I would like to thank all the panelists, all the participants, Caps and Locke, Aida, and others who reacted very promptly and put together this great event. So thank you very much, and I'll hand it back to you to let's say, launch the event.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Likewise, thank you so much for this partnership and this opportunity. Today's event, today's gathering is consisted of 2 parts. The first part, the special envoy will give a keynote speech, and then it will be followed by the moderated Q&A session. The moderator will be our visiting fellow, also a former ambassador of OSCE in Azerbaijan, in Morocco, right? Macedonia. Yeah, he'll later introduce himself in a proper way. And the second part would be the panel discussion, the regional panel discussion on multilateralism in Central Asia. So please stay tuned. And without further ado, I'm giving the mic to Special Envoy.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon to everybody. It's called, of course, you know, a keynote speech, but I hope that it's not going to be very official and very boring. In case it turns boring, please, you know, with a show of hands, tell me. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and those who are present. It's a wonderful occasion to be here, and I was thinking how to start, how to make your hearts melt at once, and to find something between Estonia and Kazakhstan, or Estonia and Central Asia, that is striking and that shows that we belong together, and we have belonged together forever. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any of that. I was thinking about the Silk Road, was thinking about the Hanseatic League. Of course, from old times, people in Eurasia have tried to be in contact with each other for mutually beneficial purposes, but sometimes also we have made war on the Eurasian continent. So in any case, we are very distant, Estonia and Central Asian countries. We have had our countrymen move here to Kazakhstan in search of better life in the 19th century and have been welcomed here. And many Kazakhs have also moved to Estonia, maybe also in search of better life, and have also been welcomed there. So maybe the closest that we have been was during the 20th century, when we were together in the Soviet Union. And in Estonia, we remember all of that period as a tragic one for our nation and for our country. And we were extremely glad when we regained independence in 1991, even before the Soviet Union fell apart. And that's important to remember that we were the ones who were pushing for restoration of our independence, saying that our independence and our path to the Soviet Union of the 3 Baltic countries was different from other countries that joined the European Union, with the Soviet Union. But of course, now we're in the 21st century, And sometimes I'm told that only old people remember what happened in the 20th century. And it's true that countries and nations should move ahead without being too much stuck in history. And also, as they say, you know, to move ahead, you cannot move ahead when you're all the time looking behind you. You should look forward. You should be facing the future. But still, it is also necessary to remember the past and always ask if there are lessons from the past that you can learn or you could learn, or if something is relevant at all. And it is a paradox, if you think about it, that the technological development, the development of technology is so fast. And we can move to Mars now. We have iPhones in our pockets that link the whole world, but at the same time, the development of society and how we live together hasn't made that great strides. And we still don't know how to live together with each other in peace. And also, history is always unfair. We haven't found a perfect way of interacting with each other. So sometimes we in Estonia think that we have suffered a lot, but other nations also think that they have suffered a lot. So it's not useful to compare who has suffered most. But I just want to say, by way of this little excursion into the past that I'm going to give, and that I am giving, that a lot is explained how we are right now. A lot what we do right now can be explained through the history. So we lost our independence before the Second World War as a result of Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. So this was done above our heads. We were not asked, and it was a deal between two big powers, Communist Russia and Nazi Germany. So one of the lessons we have learned from that is that you cannot be the subject. You have to sit around the table. You have to strive to sit around the table where things are being discussed. Another lesson that we learned was in the Soviet Union approached us or Soviet Russia approached us and said, oh, you can be spared the war, just sign an agreement whereby you will allow us to move some military bases to the territory of Estonia. And the authorities at that time thought, really, what's the use of subjecting the Estonian nation to genocide or mass killings? We better give this possibility for Russia to allocate some military bases and we would be saved. And this didn't prove to be true at all, because we were then forcibly incorporated into the Soviet Union, despite all the agreements that we had with the Soviet Russia. So again, we learned that being reasonable, even now we're being told, try to be reasonable, be reasonable. We learned that sometimes being reasonable plays against your interest, and being silent makes that you will go down in history without anybody remembering you. And that sometimes circumstances of the day are very difficult, but you should still not be silent. And the third lesson we learned was that we were alone. Before the Second World War, we were pretty much alone. And that's why also it was very difficult. It was very difficult to defend ourselves. So these are the three lessons. So once we regained independence in 1991, we immediately thought we have to be around all tables that suit us. The tables are the European Union, NATO, Council of Europe, OSCE, whatever organizations existed in Europe that shared the understanding and views that we had, we joined them. We tried to join them immediately. also in order to be around the table and to then enjoy the peace dividend. Because if we look at that, after the Second World War, some countries started enjoying the peace dividend, other countries were behind the Iron Curtain, but in essence, after 1991, we all wanted to enjoy the peace dividend. So, and one of the things also that Estonia thought was that we shouldn't try to consume, to be the consumers in these organizations that we joined, but we wanted to also contribute. Now, I have to tell you that the closest to war that I have been was in Somalia. I lived 2 years in Somalia. It's very, very difficult situation there. But still, that war somehow felt like another nation's war. And it didn't hit you in the soul or in the heart. But when the war in Ukraine started, it started feeling completely different, although I was sitting in Mogadishu and the war in Mogadishu was much closer. So I think that we can all say that we are for peace. Sometimes people say in Central Asia, they are for peace. We are also for peace. We're all for peace. War is a terrible, terrible thing. Talking now about multilateralism. The UN Secretary General is very often quoted in the UN kind of circles, but not globally and not widely. I think maybe the US president is quoted more than the UN Secretary General. But if you look at what Secretary General Guterres has said, then it's also quite striking how that person who has been elected to lead the world to peace is describing the current state of affairs. So Secretary General Guterres has said, we are edging towards the unimaginable. We are sitting on a powder keg that risks engulfing the world. The global situation is becoming intolerable and unsustainable. These are all words of Secretary General Guterres. And if you look at the motto of today's event, which Fukuyama says that we have lost the global consensus. How come then have we lost the global consensus now that the world needs consensus more than ever? So it's a tragic and quite frightening period that we are living through. Secretary General Guterres also is speaking about the appalling levels of violence and human suffering. How can that be in the 21st century when almost for 100 years we have now been building peace and the bright future, right? The UN just recently held a summit for the future. It was very difficult to agree on the text, and it was an attempt to bring us all together to see how we can live together and maybe solve some of the issues that are on the table. In Estonia, there is a theater piece that is running right now. And the subject of this theater piece is that there's a group of people who are living who are in one room, enjoying themselves, and they want to live in such a way that it's Sunday every day. Every day is Sunday. But they just don't notice that the whole house is already in fire. So maybe this is also how people now facing a very, very difficult situation in the world, how people are behaving. And also Secretary General Guterres has said that a growing number of governments feel entitled to a get out of jail free card. So kind of, evade the tragedies that are surrounding us, just pretend that nothing is happening, and somehow imagine that the global processes are not affecting them. At the same time, we know that there are two types of countries: those who have realized that they are small, and those who haven't yet realized that they are small, because we are all globally interconnected. So we are all committed to multilateralism. So let's see what Secretary General Guterres is now saying, the Secretary General of this global organization to which we all belong. He is saying that the challenges of the world require confronting three drivers on unsustainability. The first is uncertainty of unmanaged risks, the inequality that underlies injustices and grievances, and the impunity that undermines international law and the UN's founding principles. Now about the grievances and unmanaged risks. Of course, there are many, but I would like to just concentrate on a few. The first thing is representativeness. If you think that when the UN was founded, it had 51 members, and now there are 193. It's obvious that those 51 ensure that they have a respectable place in the framework, right? But others that emerged in the latter part of 20th century, for instance, they feel now that they are underrepresented, that they are not heard, irrespective of the fact that every country has one voice in the General Assembly. And many of the grievances are linked with the UN Security Council, where 5 countries have veto, so they can block anything they want. And at the same time, we have given them, through the UN Charter, primary responsibility for peace and security in the world. And there are a number of initiatives that have been undertaken to mitigate this possibility of UN 5, the permanent 5, to exercise veto without any accountability, so to say. First of all, now, when a Security Council member casts veto, a General Assembly meeting is called, whereby that country explains why this veto was important. And also, there are groups of countries, and there is a group of 130 countries that have signed a plea that in case of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes, no veto should be cast. It doesn't have the effect of law, but the fact that there are 130 countries endorsing that is already something. There's also another initiative that is going on right now at the United Nations, is that in the Charter, there is Article 27.3 that says that if a country is party to dispute, it should refrain from casting a vote. And this article of the Charter has been overlooked. It was activated in 1960s, countries were abiding, but right now, nothing much is happening about that. So this is also one of the ways which now is taken up by General. The war was not provoked by anything. It was just, Russia's attack on Ukraine that cannot be justified by anything. But I just want to say that that peace is not only about absence of conventional warfare. In Estonia, we suffered cyber attacks that almost equals to cyber war. In 2007, they were politically motivated cyber attacks that lasted for 21 days. And most of them were distributed denial of service attacks that degraded the service or caused the loss of service. And these are the new threats that we should be addressing collectively. Cyber attacks, misinformation, AI, how AI is used. And also Secretary General Guterres has talked about it, about AI ethics, and about how to build capacity in developing countries so that there is no gap between the developed and developing countries, but also how to deal with misinformation. One of the unmitigated risks is also the climate. We not only have responsibility for people. Remember, I said that people were interacting on the Eurasian continent for mutual benefit. And if we think at the United Nations, there were Millennium Development Goals. But now there are sustainable development goals, because we realize that it's not only the men, this planet. It's also about nature and our ability to continue to live in this planet. And on that, again, I would like to quote Guterres, who said in Baku, "The sound you hear is the ticking clock. We are in the final countdown to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and the time is not on our side." So this is where we are. Again, another reason to work together, and another question: how come we lost global consensus if science is absolutely clear on the fact that temperatures are rising? And the last thing I want to say that Guterres said is this issue of impunity. That is a little bit of a divisive issue. We remember there were ad hoc tribunals, ICTY, for instance, others. And then the International Criminal Court was created, which is a very, very strong word in international criminal justice. Of course, in the 90s, those were the days of optimism, but I still think, and Estonia thinks, I represent the Estonian government in this, international criminal law is a very important element of international law, should be strengthened, and we are working towards it as Estonia, together with like-minded countries. So to finish, I want to say once more that all countries in the world are small, but some countries have already understood that they are small. We have no other way than to work together, to stick together, to abide by the UN Charter. We have common responsibility for the future, and we should have dialogue with everybody. And to finish this, I just want to say that I'm glad that the second part of this discussion will be about Central Asia, because probably this part has been too much about Estonia. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ambassador Intelmann, for your insight, for your words, for your moderate optimism, given the circumstances. Looking forward words. I want to thank very much also CAPS and LOC for inviting me today. This gives rise to this dialogue, which gives rise to a very peculiar circumstance that we are from the most further corners of the European Union, Estonia and Spain, yet we are in Almaty in Kazakhstan, which makes altogether quite a peculiar geometry and perhaps a source of good ideas, let's hope. Ambassador Intelmann has a very broad experience as representative of her country to the multilateral system, also representing a multilateral supranational organization like the European Union abroad. In my case, I have more of an experience as a multilateral from within. I worked for many years in the United Nations, starting in my youth in South Africa in 1994. Probably one of the happy successes of intergovernmentalism. The election of Nelson Mandela in 1994, the UN contributed considerably to that process. I was part of it. It's the happiest thing I've done in my life. I continued for a number of years in the United Nations, and eventually I came closer to this region. I was head of the OSCE mission in Azerbaijan, later in Macedonia, of the OSCE mission in Macedonia, and finally representative of the Council of Europe, first in Moldova and last in Morocco. Professor back in Madrid University. Thanks for reminding us that history always comes back. When we brought about these lessons from Estonian past, recent and not so recent, but we see that history is coming back not only in this part of the world, also in the rest of the world. And questions of colonialism that many people thought were being forgotten in our past, especially in the past of the Western countries, are coming back. Rightly so, wrongly so, is to be seen, but they are coming back and they have to be taken into account. It's not easy, it's not a very positive or a very productive outcome to think about these things as if they had not happened or happened so long in the past that they should be forgotten, because for many people, even for a majority of people in the world, they are not. We spoke briefly before about the Summit of the Future, the outcome of the Summit of the Future, the perhaps over-ambition goals before, and we shall see what it brings really in terms of real reform. Obviously, reforming the United Nations system has many layers. There is the top layer, that's the security part, which has not really moved much, I think. There are all these initiatives we know about, and perhaps you want to elaborate further, whether you think they have any chance to come through, and which ones, especially the reform of the Security Council, which would require a very productive attitude from some of the current permanent members. On the question of Article 27, indeed, there's always this issue in intergovernmental, in the UN system at the highest level, who interprets what the things mean. So who interprets that somebody, a country is affected, is party of a given country? Because as things go nowadays, many countries are always somehow related to most of them. So there is a complicated issue. Now, when we think about multilateralism, we have global multilateralism, that's the United Nations, but then we have regional multilateral structures. The European Union is one, for example, but also the ones that are of importance. They are all of importance to Kazakhstan, I guess, also the European Union, certainly. But they are moving a lot. And as we see that people are more and more thinking about the UN as being, I don't know what the objective is, as being a little bit non-operational, to be at the least. Dysfunctional, non-operational, behind expectations, not really living up to its mandate in the charter. You can choose. We see other entities which are also intergovernmental in nature and represent which are very dynamic. And just recently, not only we had the Summit of the Future with the UN, we had the BRICS in Kazan, mostly spoken about. We have the COPs now in Baku. We had the G20 in Brazil. And then we have the meetings of the CSTO, of which and so on. So we might want to hear your views also on the role of these other regional organizations that are also somehow protagonists for different reasons and in different parts of the world. Thank you very much. I think now we are opening a dialogue, right? Good. So who starts? Yes. Ah. and I have to read. Okay, very good. Who would like to start?
If I may, as a mic guy. Yeah. As we find ourselves in such a, I don't want to sound dramatic, but crisis of multilateralism, what role do you think other, maybe more regional organizations and multilateral institutions can play, even if they are smaller in size or in the area topic, they can be issue specific? What can they do against this trend? Thank you.
Multilateral organizations have a big role to play, but it's important that the core of these interactions in these multilateral organizations is still respect for the UN Charter. Because if this goes away, then of course we are in dire straits. And respect for the UN Charter, not just only in words, but also in deeds. So that's very important also.
Okay, as we wait for other questions, I want to ask the question.
Yes.
Where do we go from here? What can we do? Different actors, governments, regional organizations, civil society, academics, others. What can we expect? Because it's a moment that you probably see it in the many fora you participate, of people being either disorientated, not knowing at all, or projecting very, very radically different views on what is to come in the next future, 5 to 10 years. So different views they present, but you wonder what will be the final outcome of these discrepancies.
Well, if I knew the answer, of course, I don't know. I would be very proud of myself if I knew the answer. But it's clear that from this fragmentation, it's the small and medium-sized countries that will lose the most. And once our former president said that for a small country, international law is its nuclear power, nuclear armament is international law for small countries. So maybe it's not a very powerful weapon, but still, I think that the more countries realize that international law is very important and that we should abide by it, the better it is. Now, what will come? It is probably necessary for all of us to understand that we should not quarrel. There is a lot of fragmentation inside societies, which is awful. So the fragmentation inside societies, coupled with the fragmentation internationally, plus misinformation, I'm afraid that will make the situation absolutely untenable. But if the civil society, academics, and everybody have that in mind, that we shouldn't contribute to further fragmentation, we should contribute to things that unite us. And if we keep that in mind every day, so if we read that something bad is happening in Estonia, so don't explode, but first double check if this is really true. Or if we read that something bad is happening in Kazakhstan, let's not overreact, let's first find if it's true and where people stand and what is the kind of underlying logic for that. So this is something that we can all do, and it is our common responsibility, even if we have leaders whom we don't reach on a daily basis, but we can keep that in mind, that there is too much polarization and all the modern information channels may be adding to it and not taking it down.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So far, we don't have questions from online audience. Maybe, okay. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much for your very interesting, insightful perspectives on multilateralism. So I would have one kind of a disguised as a question comment, but generally on multilateralism and the state of the world. because we'll have also a part on Central Asian realities. So like different writers or intellectuals have used different kind of labels, yes, to talk about the world, like age of anger, for example, because the world now people are angry because of many, problems going on and the failure of including multilateral institutions to address the anxieties and needs of common people, or age of anxiety. But one of, I think, would be also, we could talk about age of hypocrisy. Yeah. And so when the current specific reiteration of multilateral system known as liberal international order was at its height, kind of hypocrisy was quite commonplace. Yeah, and hypocrisy both through simulation, because all different countries could declare themselves as responsible, kind of members of multilateral international system, everybody championing for UN goals and objectives, even if in their deeds, they would neglect, sometimes violate these principles. So kind of a simulation, and age of simulation is, I think, quite over with pandemic, because pandemic really showed many, like the capabilities, intentions of countries across the world. But also hypocrisy in terms of the leading actors, kind of because of their influence over the system, but also influence and impact over the different countries around the world. They could sometimes, push under the cover some, problems, and shift priorities to other problems. Yeah. But today this is also over, because kind of now even leading actors, they don't hide their hypocrisy. Like this is very evident in two different approaches to maybe two most impactful and also worst crisis today, war in Ukraine, but also catastrophe tragedy in the Middle East. And so kind of people don't use even hypocrisy to show two different approaches to kind of in some ways similar, problems where civilians are, massacred. And so taking this into account, what do you think, what would be the role of, maybe, because in Kazakhstan we talk about middle powers by saying that where leading actors are more busy with their great power games, maybe middle powers can take up the leadership, yes, to empower multilateralism, to implement, etc. And we also know, like, Estonia is quite a good example of committed actor of multilateralism. So what would be the, like the professor said, yes, way forward? Yeah, thank you.
Now it works.
Okay, I am not listening. Every time I have to press, or constantly I have to press. Okay, all right, okay. So I just want to say that hypocrisy as well as propaganda have always been there. Right now we're talking about misinformation, disinformation, but I think we're talking about propaganda in a way at such large scale, almost at the industrial scale, but the phenomenon itself is not new. You are absolutely right. Is a tragedy going on in the Middle East. We as Estonia, we are for two-state solution. We have always been for two-state solution. The question is what to do for Estonia as a country. So we, of course, work within the European Union, 27 countries together, again for two-state solution, but we haven't figured that out. So it's a very difficult question. And Ukraine and the Middle East are not the only conflicts. There's also something that is going on in Sudan. Sudan, a huge country, unimaginable human suffering is going on there. Also one coup after another. It's been for years like that, and very difficult situation, but because it is in Africa, we don't notice it. And so there is suffering going on. I really do not know what we could do with immediate effect, but in my meetings in Astana, I also found out that that Kazakhstan is offering a platform for those who want to negotiate, or is trying to mediate in a very subtle way between different forces in different countries that are able to sit around the same table. In Estonia, we are not able to do that. Our reputation is not such that we could have low-key, quiet talks between different sides, or, for instance, warring parties in Estonia. I could imagine that that would end in catastrophe, because already when people land, everybody was, oh, who are these people? Because the country is so small. So, but what Kazakhstan is doing, if you are able to do that, is already very much appreciated. One thing is to advocate for something, for a solution, with a very loud voice. And another thing is to do things quietly, and those countries are also needed who are able to do that.
If I may add just a little, I think the gentleman was certainly highlighting how multilateralism is weakened. And he put forward one more reason, which is double standards. You said hypocrisy, people speak about double standards. I think we all see that. Yet, nobody really, is really putting forward a clear advocacy. Even in the advocacy, there are double standards. You advocate stronger in one place than another, in one issue than in another. So that is also to be seen. Ambassador Intelmann tells to us the answer that we want to hear, the multilateralists. International law, UN Charter, so forth. But I'm afraid
I would like to, and I was hoping you don't get me started on International Criminal Court, but here I am now. So I was president of the Assembly of States Parties of International Criminal Court 10 years ago, or 3 years, and at that time the court was dealing with African leaders, and African countries, all African countries came to me, said, this place is out of control. There needs to be political control over this court. And I was explaining to them that, look, we have a statute and now the court is independent. We as countries have set up the court, now they are independent. There's nobody who can control them. There's only the statute and rules of procedure, and they are obliged to act according to that. The African countries were not happy at all. They said, we will leave. We will leave because there needs to be some political control over the whole affair. Now we see that the court has become even more ambitious. But it's not like the prosecutor somehow can shy away. It cannot. The moment that Palestine became a state party, the prosecutor had the obligation to take up issues that are happening on its territory. And the same with Ukraine. Ukraine had made a declaration accepting the court statute, and now it's becoming a full member. There's no way that all of a sudden the prosecutor could say, no, actually, I'm not dealing with it. So here you have absolute no double standards and absolutely no hypocrisy, because the court is blind to politics. You're absolutely right. Is that strengthening the court or is it weakening the court? And right now, I was just in The Hague. The court is in a very bad spot because now not only Africans, but also Europeans and others are saying the court is out of control. There should be some political control over this place. And there is none, because this is how we set the place up. No politicization. And what do you do now? And we are at the point when it may happen that states will not allocate any resources to the court because they say there is no political checks and balances. You cannot do this. This is not feasible.
Thank you. Well, basically, Ambassador led to my question. While we know there is a distinction about the role of the countries in the multilateral setting, one is instrumental and the other is functional. And usually the small countries are functional and the ones are bigger, instrumental. The ones who are created, they actually paid, and the ones who are paid are hegemons. And this is what is clearly happening. Like, if you see the design and why this whole feeling of hypocrisy or double standards come, because there are certain rules or certain principles are being neglected, that it's actually about all of us, not about certain of us. And unfortunately, what we are saying, and you basically said it, if there is no political control, there is always a financial control. And we already saw it in the first term of President Trump, when he started cutting the funding for UN and other agencies he didn't like. So do you anticipate that, it would be the same thing, that US as a leading funder of multilateral institutions would start cutting the funding, and it means weakening the institutions? And where is the other opportunity? The funding would be coming to those institutions and bringing new agenda from the other hegemons who are funding more. Thank you.
But I could anticipate that overall the funding to multilateral organizations is going down. And we are seeing a number of organizations, like the OSCE. The OSCE doesn't have a budget for already 3 years. It is very seriously affecting the field offices because no field office can plan for a longer period of time. It is just, what we do today and what we do tomorrow, what we do the day after tomorrow, we don't know, because we don't know if there's funding. And of course, the UN has also extra budgetary funding possibilities, but who can give so much funding if the biggest funders are falling off? I don't know. Of course, we have to cut activities, but the other side of it is that there is this newly found assertiveness that countries find it that the assistance
Yes, thank you. What the gentleman said before when he was kind of listing reasons for the non-very good shape of multilateralism today. One, now that you touch the field, is failure of delivery. Failure of delivery. I would like to point out Haiti. I was in the mission Haiti, 1995. Yet Haiti is still in a mess. That's failure of delivery. And at the ground level, also peacekeeping operations. Some have been successful, some have been intermediate, some have been. Okay, Eastern Congo. Not to mention the failures of the UN. So the public also, countries, because maybe they have now more resources, that is good. They don't need UNDP that much. The little funding that comes through UNDP or other multilateral agencies doesn't mean that much anymore. Before they don't really wanted that money, and now they don't want it that much, so they can easily get rid of them. And this thing that they don't see it as that was now being, because the attitudes may be more or less hypocritical, but maybe some people may say now that it's not that positive, the impact. I bring back again 80, when I was in 94, sorry, the kids, basically everybody in the population would welcome the UN with a big smile, with tears, the eyes of hope. 20 years later, people throw stones. Very sad. The delivery has not always been
I fully agree, but maybe all of that then also merits discussion in this framework of new realities. No money, delivery has been weak. Maybe we should look at issues differently, and this is also the discussion that is happening in the UN Secretariat. Maybe peacekeeping operations haven't been the right way to go. Maybe we have been too intrusive in countries' internal decision-making processes. But then again, it's the Security Council that gave the mandate. Maybe in the 21st century, we need a totally different way of interaction with countries. So all of this, the European Union is giving its assistance based on requests of countries, of global partners. I was working in 2 countries based on requests, but sometimes these requests change because there are sudden changes in the countries. There is war going on. There is this, there is that. There was Ebola in Liberia. Sometimes we are not able to react immediately. Maybe something can be done there. So the world is changing, and as they say, you shouldn't let a good crisis to go to waste. A crisis is there to think critically and to take decisions that otherwise you would not be able to take. Have to finish immediately.
Ambassador Intelmann, Professor Ansola, thank you so much for your insights. You're definitely right. There is a lack of a global consensus, I think, currently in our international system. We've gone from bipolarity to unipolarity, now to great power competition. So I wanted to specifically ask about the EU's role in Central Asia, because the 2 greatest powers who have influence in this region are Russia and China. And many people and scholars have analyzed that perhaps Central Asia could be a building block for an alternative world order, one that goes against the current rules-based order, less focus on human rights, more focus on the interests of China and Russia. And so then that could cause overdependence of Central Asian countries on these powers, especially countries perhaps with weaker state capacities like Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan as well. So what do you see as the EU's role over the next 5 years, 10 years in strengthening the sovereignty and independence of Central Asian countries? I know the EU has been investing in the Trans-Caspian corridor and engaging in other areas in Central Asia. So what do you see? What do you see as the evolution of the EU's role in the region? And kind of second question, do you think perhaps in the context of Donald Trump's election in the US, do you think the EU can take on a leading role in advocating for more multilateral solutions in international affairs, and how do you think that would happen? Thank you.
Definitely, the European Union is advocating for multilateral solutions because we are ourselves not a country, but a collection of states that sometimes, for whom sometimes it's very difficult to agree among ourselves. But concerning Central Asia, here I'm afraid that I have to leave it for the second panel, or then for my distinguished colleague here, Professor. I know from even my meetings in Astana that the European Union is valued as partner in Kazakhstan. There is enhanced partnership between Kazakhstan and the European Union. The investments are big and the investments are continuing. So the European Union feels that it is a valued partner here in Kazakhstan, and hopefully also in other Central Asian countries.
Thank you. I think we conclude. I just want to say something about this. I think geographically, obviously, Central Asia is taking more and more relevance. They are in the middle of this geopolitical game that is being shaping international relations lately. And they are in the middle, north-south, and the dialogue between this south and south emergent, and they are certainly between east and west. So on that, they have a role to play now, whether they like it or not, and that's somehow how similar in the South Caucasus. These are countries, and it's the case of Kazakhstan, and that is an asset that have learned to keep relations with many at the same time. And I think this, in this part of the world, is a must. It's not a choice, and therefore developing that skill of not, as it was mentioned, not further compartmentalizing, not further antagonizing. Is their skill that they can put to use for the global community. And I think of this, we are done for this part. We still have 10 minutes? Okay.
10.
We still have time.
Yeah, there is an online question that we received.
Please.
Yeah, let me read it. Ireland currently champions the issue of accountability of Israel at the EU level. Estonia is very involved in all issues concerning Ukraine, and the EU has already passed 14 sanction packages against Russia. But nothing has been done to address accountability of Israel. Is Estonia planning to support Ireland to ensure credibility of the EU?
I am unfortunately not familiar with this file, as I said, but as in a general context, Estonia is supporting the International Criminal Court. We believe in the court's independence, and we are supporting the two-state solution. I am not familiar with the Irish proposals.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions from the audience? Not much. I can maybe ask one more. As Caps and Lock is a think tank, and I'm a young think tank employee, I'm curious what we as a think tank organizations can do to address this public skepticism towards multilateralism, how we can maybe bridge the stakeholders, bring the ideas that can revive the multilateral institutions.
Skepticism is nothing to be ashamed of, or nothing to be condemned, because there are shortcomings. The most important thing for me, again, as I said, is promoting dialogue, and not promoting fragmentation, not promoting anger, because there's too much of anger, frustration, and fragmentation in the world right now.
Thank you very much. I would add to this that together with the skepticism about multilateralism has also come about the skepticism about think tanks and about civil society. For many reasons. One is because in some parts of the world, they have been very close to multilateralism. Funding has come from multilateral sources. The inspiration has come, the language has come from multilateral sources, to a point that they were somewhat almost indistinguishable or very close. So the same lack of delivery that was seen in multilateral mechanisms is also to be seen in think tanks. I have also worked in one. I know very well the frustration because the vocation of think tanks is to make contributions to policy making. You say things because you are freer to say whatever you want, because you have more means to do research. You can focus on this, you can focus on that. The politicians cannot, people in office cannot. And then you go to them and you tell them the right path is this one, we think the right path is this one. And hopefully they listen to you a little bit. Well, not necessarily. Number one, when you bring things, and then also what has happened is the thing has turned upside down. It was the institutions that went to the think tanks. I have no time to create language for this. I know what I want. Give me language. You have experts, you write. And I use, but you don't question me. This is the part. And so there's also a bit of the crisis of credibility and capacity for delivery from the think tank community. So I think one of the keys is to stick to the original thing, is that think tanks are independent. They have to use independence. That is their main thing. And the knowledge. They count on lots of people whose professors or academic researchers whose only duty is to think about the issue. They don't have to run to the meeting, decide what to allocate funds or whatever, as people in office do. And they have to use this strength without their product. And this has not been so clear.
Very quick question. So we are actually living in a world which is much different than when these all multilateral institutions have been created. And the purpose of that, because of the World War II, and they were actually trying to address the issues then they grew enormously and become huge bureaucracies. So now current reality is like the old generation of diplomats are actually leaving, the new generation of diplomats are coming. Not necessarily very diplomatic, most of them are very technocratic. So you see these institutions are full with the technocrats rather than the diplomats, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know. But it's also coming to a point that the new generation coming, which is a very different generation because of the digital development, because of the access to information, and because of AI, soon probably you don't need to, think tank to write your wording. AI will do it for you, right? I'm just exaggerating, but it's a notion if the institutions are becoming too old and they're actually not addressing. Does it mean that we have to create new institutions or we have to reform the current bureaucracies? Thank you.
The world is changing. At a certain point, when internet connections started developing very fast, people were saying soon there will be no need for nation state anymore because we will have the global governance of some sort of people without nation states and without this bureaucracy or whatever. There will be global consensus on some kind of global governance through internet or AI or whatever. This hasn't happened yet. And again, it's too early to say whether we need new institutions or we need to repair the old ones. My own experience tells me that if we are living in a very shaky world right now, it's not very wise to start dismantling what we have. I am, of course, I was reminded yesterday by one of my counterparts that the League of Nations created that piece of international law upon which the United Nations was afterwards built. But look, there was war in between. So I would say that as long as we are not at war, at global war right now, let's try to live with the institutions by slightly changing them, but not dismantling them completely. I can only imagine if we reopen the whole UN Charter, then probably we will have to do something that happened in the 20th century. At a certain point, there was no international law. So it's too tricky not right now to dismantle everything, I think.
Thank you very much. I conclude now, but I will give you the floor again, the last word if you feel like it. No, I just want to say on predictions, we have seen so many wrong predictions. Again, we are a bit disorientated because from Fukuyama's failed prediction to what will happen in the history, what will happen with internet has been, oh, finally the forum for a true, real, direct democracy in the world. Anybody could say whatever they want. That is what we thought at the beginning of the internet, remember. And it's going to bring finally real democracy to the world. And then it turns out that not necessarily. To all these predictions that have failed have made all of us also intelligently skeptical. As I don't want to dare because I am aware that maybe it goes in a completely unpredicted way. From the most intelligent people to the best analysts, they have all, not to talk about the very recent last chapter, but on everything, people have failed, including, by the way, the dissolution of the Soviet Union at the time. So we are extremely cautious. But goodwill sometimes has to be, so it's the only thing we have to work with. And to what Ambassador was saying, I mean, we all have this in mind. The UN might be starting to look a little bit like the League of Nations, because there's so many things that nobody really pays attention to it. Now, how did it end? It ended in a war. Now, we need reform. So the question is the world going to be collectively intelligent enough as to realize it? Okay, we know that in history, the way of achieving major reforms have been wars and civil wars. It's true. You can look at it. It's the only positive outcome of these kind of episodes. Can we this time be collectively intelligent enough as to look at it and not need the Third World War? Yes, not need the Third World War. The major changes and reshape that is needed. But on this, I would like to go for last word if you want to. Yes.
Well, I don't want the last word because we are living in the world that is constantly changing and we don't know what is happening tomorrow. But let's have a positive outlook and keep the spirit of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Colleagues, now let's have a short technical break of 10 minutes and see you all at the next panel at 4. Yeah, sharp.
Hello, once again, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here with such a distinguished panelist and engaged audience for this important discussion on multilateralism in Central Asia. This panel would be the regional one, and we will hear from the perspectives from all Central Asian countries, almost all, except maybe for Turkmenistan. Yeah, it's an honor to moderate this panel. Let me first introduce our distinguished panelists on my left, starting from my left. Professor, International School of Economics, Maksut Nurikbayev University, Iqboljon Qoraboyev. Then we have Zuhra Halimova, who is an independent expert and our non-resident fellow at Kapsanlog. Then we have Bakhtirbek Satabekov, Director, Alliance of Civic Initiatives Promotion, representing Kyrgyzstan, Zuhra representing Tajikistan, and Iqboljon representing both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and our colleague Shalkar Nurseitov, who is the Director of Central Asian Policy Solutions, representing Kazakhstan. So in this quite cozy regional panel, we will be discussing the challenges to the multilateralism we're facing with. We've gone through different events in the last 5 to 10 years in Central Asia, which are shaped or changed the shape of the region. And then, as it was rightly said during the first panel, we already passed 1,000 days of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and it also contributes to the overall skepticism about the effectiveness of the multilateral system. So yeah, maybe the first question to Professor Iqboljon, how can regional organizations or frameworks in Central Asia strengthen multilateral cooperation and contribute to greater regional stability and development? And how the recently established Central Asian Cooperation Consultative Platform can contribute to this idea?
Thank you, Aida. Good afternoon, good evening, dear colleagues, dear friends, dear guests, your excellencies. It's a great pleasure for me today to talk about Central Asia and multilateralism. Or I can.
Maybe you can just switch it over and use this mic.
Okay. So, okay, it would be a pleasure for me to speak about Central Asia and multilateralism. Especially, I would like to highlight in my brief notes Central Asian continued commitment to multilateralism. I think we can talk about continued commitment because despite global tensions, Central Asian countries, they have remained steadfast in practicing multi-vector foreign policy, upholding the principles of the UN system, especially the political independence, territorial integrity, and participating actively in different multilateral and regional fora. This consistency is not merely a passive adherence to norms, but a reflection of growing ability of Central Asian countries to contribute actively to multilateralism. But before talking about this, I would like to thank CAPS Unlock and Embassy of Estonia in Astana for organizing this timely and important event on multilateralism in Central Asia. I also want to recognize Estonia's remarkable contributions to multilateralism as a small, like you mentioned yourself, but impactful state. Estonia's enthusiasm to uphold and promote the multilateral international system serves as a good example for many nations, including those in Central Asia. First of all, let's talk briefly about historical role of multilateralism in recent history, post-Soviet history of Central Asia, because I believe that multilateralism has been an integral part to the post-independence trajectory of Central Asian countries. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the global liberal international order played an important role in defining and strengthening the political independence and global recognition of our countries. Central Asian nations were primarily, of course, on the receiving end of multilateral norms, but also material and technical support, benefiting significantly from these frameworks led by multilateral institutions and the architects of this system. So this engagement with multilateral system enabled Central Asian states to develop their unique statecraft founded on principles such as multi-vector foreign policy, strong focus on UN-led international system, and mutual respect for sovereignty. So these values, they are essential in navigating today the complexities of geopolitics and ensuring the stability of our region. However, like all human-made systems, multilateralism can also fail sometimes, can witness some crisis moments. Today, for example, we are witnessing a profound crisis in multilateralism, challenges such as the global pandemic, but the ongoing illegal war in Ukraine, but also the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Middle East and beyond. They expose multilateral systems' limitations and its inability to meet the expectations of a global society. So this crisis revealed both the weaknesses in the current system, but also the urgent need to redefine multilateralism to make it more adaptive and effective in addressing contemporary global and regional challenges. In this challenging context, I mentioned that Central Asian countries' unwavering commitment to multilateralism is notable. But especially today, we are also witnessing a shift, let's say, in the nature of engagement of Central Asian countries with multilateral system. I mentioned that from 1990s, we were more on the receiving end and for the good of individual countries, but also of the region, of the multilateral system. But now, in terms of our ability to uphold, at least in that region of the world, the respect, unwavering respect for UN-led multilateral system shows to a growing proactive and contributive role of Central Asia in multilateral international system. So we can talk about evolving role of Central Asia in multilateralism. However, this contribution of Central Asia and engagement of Central Asia with multilateral system should be understood in a comprehensive manner, because multilateralism processes, they don't happen in a vacuum. Yeah, they don't evolve and proceed abstractly. They are intertwined with national, bilateral, but also regional processes. And this can be seen in Central Asia, because today Central Asian enhanced participation in and contribution to multilateral system is supported and enabled by what I can call twin processes of reinvigorated regionalism, but also embracement of minilateralism. Because Central Asian reinvigorated regional framework, mostly driven by consultative meetings, which was mentioned by our colleague Aida, but also in different bilateral instruments as well, because Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, for example, they have signed a treaty on allied relationships in December 2022. And after the ratification of that treaty by Kazakhstan recently, now this treaty is enforced. It's in force, yeah, between our countries. And Article 16 of that treaty highlights that regionalism, which we can call soft regionalism, yeah, in Central Asia will be supported by Kazakh-Uzbek bilateral dynamics, because it's very important for but also we have to speak about minilateralism. Yeah, because for example, we are now witnessing COP29, a conference in Baku. While it's challenging and states are really trying hard to achieve kind of global consensus, but on the sidelines of that COP29 important multilateral platform, many mini agreements are taking shape. And so Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, they have signed an agreement on green corridors on the sidelines of COP29. And after its announcement, Kyrgyzstan already declared its maybe willingness to consider joining this green corridor. And so this minilateralism, where willing, like-minded countries are able and ready to go for agreements to inspire others to join them, is also very important for advancing goals and objectives of multilateralism, because in Central Asia, especially, both regional agreements, but also this kind of minilateral agreements, they are always in line, in conformity, and aspiring, in fact, to implement UN-led multilateral systems, goals, and objectives. Yeah. In a conclusion, I would like also to say that we must also have to pay attention to what some scholars refer to as substantial multilateralism, because this famous scholar, but also policy maker, John Gerard Ruggie, the American scholar who was also UN Deputy Secretary General, he was known for his definition of multilateralism. So next to nominal multilateralism, where a large number of states cooperate, he was speaking about spirit of multilateralism or substantial multilateralism, where the relations between the states will be shaped by two principles. One is principle of indivisibility. Another is the principle of diffuse reciprocity, where the states, they are not always in these short-term quid pro quo transactions, but they are ready to support each other and to cooperate with each other over long term. And I think now the next important phase in Central Asia should be to shift focus and to call for promoting this substantial multilateralism spirit. And this we can see because especially in recent years, Kazakhstan, yes, has taken up some leadership. Contributions to both regional but also multilateral initiatives for promoting peace, stability. This is kind of an example of diffuse reciprocity. But also Uzbekistan in the current period is actively involved in contributing both in cooperation, but when needed, kind of unilaterally, yes, to promote a positive environment of solidarity and cooperation. Yeah. And I think this can be conducive to spreading and consolidation of both kind of nominal multilateralism, where we are strongly anchored within this UN-led multilateral system, but also substantial spirit of multilateralism, where now it would be our turn maybe ready to shoulder responsibility, but also to share the burden to uphold multilateral system and without necessarily expecting some short quid pro quo expectations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Iqboljon. And you were right, Excellencies, our mics are intelligent. So very moment it turns off, it means that you're already above your time. With this, I just want to give a floor to Makatbek, and you're representing Kyrgyzstan. And recently in Kyrgyzstan, there was a new legislation introduced on foreign agents. And this matter, my question is how the multilateral platforms help to foster better government practices and promote human rights. What is the role for the multilateral platforms?
Aida, and hello everyone. Yes, it's a very important issue now because a lot of of you know that it was just recently adopted this year, but I guess multilateral organizations still have a good influence on our governments, country government. Why? I just will provide a couple of examples. First, these attempts to promote to adopt this restrictive and discriminatory legislation started about 2 years ago. And civil society organization against of that about this period is open and very firm support of international organizations, EU, Venice Commission, and others. And maybe you remember that this is the same attempt started in Georgia last year. Of course, struggle was much more severe, but in 1 year, attempt was successful for this government in Georgia. It means that still in our region, multilateral organizations still have some influence and can influence on that as well. Another example, yesterday I was invited by the Ministry of Energy for some meeting, for one meeting, not in the ministry, in the luxury hotel. And as I understand from the speech of the Minister of Energy, was invited about 40 civil society organizations. What? They do a presentation. They started new project on construction Kambarata 1 hydropower plant. And they present they will start in near future do environmental impact assessment. Because of that, we were invited. And during the presentation, I have understood that this project is supported by World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and other development partners. It means that it was maybe an opinion of the World Bank, because they have a policy on these issues. They ask you have to organize consultation with stakeholders. We presented that on the affected areas in Adamja, in Jalabat Oblast, we organized meetings with different villages, with communities there, and invited in Bishkek with CSOs. But we asked, guys, it's transboundary project, because Narayan River is going to the Sirdarya River. It's in the part of the Sirdarya Basin, and in the end, we have Aral Sea. Yes, we have 3 partners in this project: Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and we do everything transparently, openly. You know any problems, but as the basin is how to think it Tajikistan as well. No. We have 3 stakeholders in this project. In 3 countries, we will do something. We didn't understand till they will provide to us like detailed plan of future consultation in these countries, but anyway, as multilateral organizations participating in this project, will finance, they have to do, because Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan parts of the ESPO Convention, environmental impact assessment in boundary context. And we mentioned that to the minister, and as I understand, he was surprised. Of course, for him, it's okay. He doesn't know, but World Bank, ADB should know about that. Maybe they can insist on that, and it means that CSOs in all our countries will be engaged to discuss this impact assessment. These 2 examples is showing that we still have an opportunity to advocate in multilateral organizations more strict policies on protecting human rights, engagement of civil society and other stakeholders in different discussions related with their security. Another good news for us, you know that the Russian Federation has a problem with saying to us, guys, last decade, you should be more accurate because Russian influence is strong in your region. Also, China is very strong in your region. But now, Russia has problems with funds. And China, we have good signals from Chinese economic performance. Big problems in construction sector, a very big subnational debt, And other signals that economic performance is weakening and means not, not to be afraid of these two players. Guys, let's start to be more active in promotion values of transparency, accountability of governments, and promote more inclusiveness. Engage all CSOs, different kinds of CSOs, in decision-making process. And of course, it's difficult to explain to our government because all our countries now are like semi-autocratic states. But anyway, we still remember the time which was before, even 2 years ago, Kyrgyzstan was like hybrid democracy, and we remember that. And our free media and NGOs still happening to have this, and in culture of our even state agencies still have like they're accustomed to communicate with us. Maybe the same in Kazakhstan now, and I guess we have exact time to start to promote this, and let's advocate. I'm asking our colleagues from Central Asian countries to join our efforts to advocate among multilateral organizations that there should be more strict in promoting democratic values, the values of human rights in our.
Thank you. Maybe just an immediate question to you, but how it can be done in the context of those organizations? For example, the OSCE offices in our countries, which were downgraded, and now they're just program offices having limited budget, having limited influence, and like being controlled by the MFAs of our countries. How it is possible actually to work together when we cannot see much of support to this one?
Of course, we see still we have a problem because budget not approved last year. My opinion is that we need to pay more attention to multilateral fights like World Bank, EBRD, including the mission protection of human rights, Asian Development Bank, because they saying that we are only for development, like poverty alleviation and so on. But guys, it's not so sustainable, this economic growth, if we don't have systems of a political system of check and balances. Kyrgyzstan, it's real, has shown that in 3 revolutions, we have some growth, revolution, they're dropping, one more growth and one more revolution. Because of that, better to pay more attention of social stability, which is based not only economic stability, better to pay attention to more open, accountable, and fair state. We need to promote these values because unfair and impunity manner of acting of our state actors is leading to this sometimes social instability in our country. I guess our development should pay more attention to this aspect of development, not only just economic growth.
Thank you so much. And let's leave it maybe for the second part, for the Q&A session, because to those MDBs, we do have some questions too, and how to leverage their limited capacity to support the civil society in their aspiration to make a democracy case in Central Asia. But Shalkar, I just wanted to ask you a question, being an expert from Kazakhstan. What's your opinion on the global rivalries and our attempt to build multilateral foreign policy? And sometimes we can see that those agendas are competing with each other, and how to remain independent and at the same time to be a part of that many organizations.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. It's my honor to be on this distinguished panel. If you look at these strategic documents of the Central Asian governments, we can find out that the main principles of their foreign policy are multi-vector and equidistance. So it means that they want to be friends to all these great powers and regional powers, and also some countries who had interest in our region. But if you, as we remember from our recent political history of Central Asia, our interregional cooperation has a direct relation, or there is a correlation between our nations and between interpersonal relationships between our presidents. Let's take the example of Islam Karimov and Nursultan Nazarbayev. Based on our history, we cannot say that they always had a bromance. Let's take the example of former president of Kyrgyzstan, Almaty Atambayev, especially during his last year of presidency. There was tensions between the outgoing president, or how we call it, lame duck, and our then president Nazarbayev. There was also tension. It also affected economic relationship between our nations, especially when Kazakhstan government ordered to close their border, not allowed to Kyrgyz businesses to do activities in Kazakhstan and also in Russia. That said, I want to mention that yes, we do witness some multilateral activities in our region, but personally, I cannot call it classic multilateralism based on its official definition. It's a collaboration between autocratic presidents. It's more driven by the president than interests of our people, our businesses, and our non-state actors. So not to be so vocal, I want to give example of the recent research by researchers Aida Nuridinova and Danvik Arunov, who found out that over the past several years, starting from 2015 till 2023, interactions between our countries, especially among presidents, more than redoubled. And the lion's share of these interactions was among the presidents, which shows that especially after the annexation of the Crimea, then after the invasion of Ukraine, basically our presidents started to interact frequently in comparison to the 2015, in comparison to 2021. So it shows that interpersonal relationship or chemistry between presidents matter. At the same time, I would say that I do believe that members of our government care about national security, but also they care more about the regime stability in their respective countries. For example, we know that out of 5 Central Asian states, 3 of them are members of CSTO. And recently, there was an amendment proposed to the agreement on the status of the CSTO formation. There's a phrase which is a very vague crisis situation. So if there's a crisis situation in CSTO member states, CSTO troops can be brought and to stabilize the situation. So it might be the situation like general events that happened in Kazakhstan, which led to at least 238 deaths in Kazakhstan. Also, it can be interpreted by the Kremlin otherwise. So we don't know what exactly this crisis situation means. So when it comes to national security, unfortunately, it's more about the security of the authoritarian government. Yes, I agree that multilateralism is facing crisis. We need to cooperate more to solve our common issues and they face these challenges. But unfortunately, everything that is related to cooperation end up with just pledges from our government. Yes, we do see some progress in some areas, not really focused on politics, but on economics, on education, tourism, and etc. But as you know from the classic definition of multilateralism, the main founding principles of this concept is that it has to include consultation, inclusion, and solidarity. Of course, we do see such kind of principles in action in our region, but unfortunately, non-state actors of multilateralism are not, as my colleagues mentioned, are not playing active role in solving regional issues. They are not always brought to the table to discuss these issues. Unfortunately, they have been used as a tools rather than subject of this multilateralism in our region. That said, I think, of course, in the coming future, we'll face urgent issues related to water, energy, and migration in our region. Yes, we need to more active involvement of non-state actors and also international organizations and our partners in Europe and the western part of the world. But it seems to me that China and Russia has more than doubled the efforts to keep the region in the orbit of influence by promoting infrastructure initiatives, by promoting amendments to the agreement on security. It's related to the STO, it's related to Shanghai organization. So I think it should be taken into account if we really care about multilateralism in our region. And also, it's important to keep in mind that not always interaction between presidents means interaction on behalf of the national interests of Central Asian states. So these are my talking points.
Thank you very much, Shalkar and Zuhra, finally. What's your perspectives on the multilateralism in fostering the regional security in Central Asia? As a security expert, I think it is so relevant to you. And by saying security, we're like looking at this issue broadly. We're talking about the challenges that we're facing with in the fields like the climate change, for example, or digital cybersecurity. And of course, we're talking about like hard security issues or neighboring with Afghanistan. I think it is a crucial issue. So Zuhra, over to you.
Thank you, Aida. I think if we look at the word security, it actually mentioned in all documents where all the Central Asian countries signed it. No matter if it is UN or it is EU or it's US or it's China or it's India, doesn't really matter. If you look through the whole statements and all the documents, security is like, number one word one. And it's actually also prioritized very highly. Is it because the geography of Central Asia? Is it because of the past? Is it because of the current and future? But if you look through all these platforms, at least like, the last C5+1 meetings and C5+ regional meetings like EU and GCC is upcoming, you will see the whole notion of security becoming like, a red line as a cross-cutting issue. So what is actually concerned? Why it is so hard? First, because of Afghanistan in the number one and the heritage we had as a post-Soviet country having Afghanistan in war. Then we had 9/11, and 9/11 actually brought the hegemony of US, pushing the agenda of anti-terrorism partnership. And all these countries of Central Asia, almost like, in once they entered that partnership. However, all these issues of security were actually coming even sooner. You probably remember NATO partnership for peace activities, and Central Asian countries have joined actively, although they are not actually NATO members. And they are very far away actually from NATO states. But these all activities were coming from the issue and concern of the security and stability of the region. The other problem is when we talk about security, what we actually mean. What the multilateral level means, is it about global security, is it about regional security, is it about state security, cross-border security, human security, or citizen security? In every single of this, each country has their own approach, how they see themselves, although they will have shared common ground about concern of security. However, the approach of using these particular documents and platforms and decisions are based on the decisions of each country itself. What is their priority number one? Like, for example, when there was a conflict with Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan on the border, the whole shift of the security moved to the north. However, the issue of Afghanistan did not disappear, especially when United States left and NATO countries left Afghanistan, basically giving the Taliban a sort of like, opportunity to show that, yes, a terrorist organization, which that time listed in most of the countries as a terrorist organization, can achieve to actually take over the country, to the state, and create their own state. They don't call it a terrorist activity, they call it differently. However, still in the most of the countries, listing, it stays as a terrorist organization. Also, it created the opportunity to think for organizations like ISIS and many other radical organizations, that there is an opportunity for them to think, if they will resist long enough, even like large hegemonic countries with large military presence can lose patience and they might leave. So this is actually precedent issue, and this is something everyone is worried about. Now we have China is trying to deal with Afghanistan, but their concern is not really Afghanistan. Their concern is Uyghur issue and terrorism crossing back to China. So it's really a very strong dilemma. The other thing we should not forget, that all the countries of Central Asia, after collapse of Soviet Union, decided immediately to sign up for most of the multilateral treaties, especially UN. And it was not because they actually thought through everything as an implication and, and what they have to do and obligations, because there was very limited time, they had to do it, because they needed to have that recognition as a independent states. And so they've actually had a list of the treaties they actually signed up in a very, very short time. They don't do it now. They think twice before signing many of the agreements, but they still did it that time. And so now they have to deal with this because they actually made the sort of like, contribution, their own will, a political will that time. So what do we have now? We have so many different platforms where Central Asian countries are participating. One of the latest was BRICS. And that is actually another layer of discussion whether Central Asians will join BRICS and it will be BRICS plus, and whether the BRICS will be effective as. But before that, it was Shanghai Cooperation. It started with this whole notion of having very good, economic stability, which will effectively bring to security. But then it was over the years turning more on the security platform rather than economic. So it, kind of creating this whole notion of shared labor between Russia and China on security issues and economic issues and influences in Central Asia. We also have CSTO, which is a very interesting phenomenon. as I said, that Central Asians were trying to get rid of the past, or Soviet past, by entering a new phase of their development as an independent state. And CSTO is kind of an institution which still holds them to the past. However, even within the club of Central Asian countries are not the same opinion about CSTO, like, you know, the role of CSTO and how it's going to evolutionize or reform. Now, for example, Uzbekistan's opinion. Uzbekistan withdrew from CSTO by acknowledging it and never actually expressed the will to come back. So, and it's very interesting. It's one of the largest also military powers inside Central Asia with the capabilities it has, but it's not member of CSTO. And then we have neutral Turkmenistan as well. And Uzbekistan's position, which is actually very current, it's three ends. It's no military affiliation with any of the military institutions, no sending their troops to any of the conflicts. And there is another, and I really don't want to say, because I don't remember exactly what was, but they have actually clearly, you know, predisposed themselves that no, they are not going to return to any military, especially CSTO, anymore. So there would be no recovering the dialogue from Russia, well, like, you know, a pressure to Uzbekistan that they have to return back. Another platform we are seeing, again, C5+1. If you look again through the communiques, different countries, they have different approaches. All of them have security issue number one. It's security and anti-terrorism, which is very interesting. And then some of the countries mention about drug trafficking, anti-drug trafficking. And you will actually see how they define for themselves. Like, it would be very different definition of South Korea security towards Central Asia and Central Asia countries, rather than if it would be coming from China. And also it would be very interesting to look at how the definition of like Gulf states now, talking about security, and there would be C5 regional meeting, C5 GCC C5+1 into in Samarkand next year, how they're going to define what is going to be an issue of security at that time. And it's definitely going to be thinking about implication of current conflicts in Central Asia and MENA region onto Central Asia, and how it's going to evolutionize this new wave of probably new type of radicalism and terrorism and etc., which we are going to see anytime soon. Also, Afghanistan have created this whole notion about security, and I remember World Bank and USAID and many other organizations invested a lot on CASA 1000. And this is the largest, one of the largest energy projects. However, it was not really about energy. It was actually about security and anti-terrorism, to connect electricity to the parts of the Pakistan and Afghanistan, which actually can get more electricity and have economic development, thus affect the opportunity for becoming more radical and, you know, being extreme. So now we have Afghanistan there, and now it's dilemma for Central Asia. Is it part of the Central Asia, South Asia initiative, or it's now again Central Asia separate from Afghanistan? And again, what will happen to the rest of the world? And the last thing is, of course, all Central Asian except for few are joining WTO. And again, one of the concern is economic development and trade. But then we see all the projects which we are actually talking about, starting with TAPI and CASA.
Thank you very much, Zuhra. And I think, yeah, two maybe things to add, maybe another layer to the regional security, which is connected to the plans of some of our governments, like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, to introduce the nuclear power plant. So I think there will be another layer of the nuclear security for the region, which is maybe not very much relevant to Tajikistan, but yeah, keeping in mind that you are bordering with Uzbekistan, and yeah, it's not far.
No, I mean, nuclear stuff will be always relevant because all of the Central Asian countries were somehow the source of uranium and other, nuclear minerals for the economy of Soviet Union. So we still have a problem with the waste of this nuclear. The question is about not necessarily the nuclear per se, it's about the energy. So all is driven about the issue of the energy, and it's all related to the security. So as in Soviet times, we know there is a lot of alternative stuff, but is it enough for the growing economies in Central Asia? It's not, because they're going to grow and grow and grow. It's empty, everyone wants to invest here if the ecosystem is right. But the problem is, what are you doing after this? When you actually have the nuclear plant on Balkhash, for example, is there enough water to cool it down? The problem is the water. So the question is, not only nuclear is the water, which actually comes first, and the water is actually because the glaciers are melting so fast, and there is no recovery yet on the glaciers. So it's actually creating this another nexus of security and climate change. And the problem is, as much as we have less water in the region, it actually will turn into creating more and more opportunities for extremism and radicalism to grow, because the population will actually feel the pressures on them, and they will have to make a choice. And the choice not necessarily will be always creating the activism and do something about it. And there would be some ones who will actually start blaming others, and they will become more radical on their choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuhra. And yeah, speaking about the energy security, I think we have to look at also the growing digitalization things, AI, and the ambitions of some of the Central Asian countries to build the huge data centers. And again, this is the questions related to the cooling of those systems and etc. And speaking about Caspian Sea, its status also a challenging thing, because yeah, we have some other participating countries who actually have their voices. With that, I just wanted to, since we're here at Caps Unlock, we're working to boost the regional cooperation among our countries. And since, as from what I heard from you, the multilateralism issues are a bit confusing for our countries, because we're participating in so many multilateral organizations. I think there is a need for more of a regional cooperation. And if I may ask you, each of you, to contribute to the discussion, maybe coming up with one or two building blocks for this regional cooperation. What other one or two issues that could be a basis for the regional cooperation and regional integration, potentially, if it is possible at all? And we can go another way around. Shalkar, we can start with you.
Thanks for the question, Aida. I think we have, as Zuhra said, we have some common grounds. We have some understanding that these urgent issues must be solved. We have a long list of issues that can be addressed and solved in the coming years. But I believe that first of all, we can focus more, first of all, on the energy sector, since we are building at least 3 NTPs in our region. And the problem is related, it's multifaceted. It's related to human capital. It's related to national security. It's related to security of local population. And most importantly, it's about our environment. Unfortunately, because of the some objective and subjective reasons, these issues are not appropriately addressed in our region, because we are focused more on economic development, on the social and economic diversification, and etc. So first, I think it's the energy sector. Second is related to water, because it's going to be an urgent issue in the upcoming years, since we rely heavily on these border water resources. Daria, for example, it's the main source of water in our region. And also, Balkhash heavily relies on India, which starts from China. And also, Caspian Sea is also facing challenges over the past several years. And I think the water is the second issue. The third one, I believe it's related to maybe it's a combination of national security challenge coming from the Kremlin and the Beijing's approach towards Central Asia, because they are initiating so many economic and security initiatives designed to limit our capabilities to safeguard our sovereignty and economic development. So I think it's the three main areas that we can focus more by first solving our domestic issues as a sovereign nation, by diversifying our economy, by boosting our governance, and also by giving more chances to civil society to be part of this process. And I think we can then have more tangible results. We start focusing domestic issues, then to find real, points that can be starting point for all of us as a, interdependent and as a interdependent nations, which has not only commonality in history, but also strive for the common future. Thank you.
Due to our geography, we have to cooperate. That all our countries have extractive political institutions, and when political institutions are extractive, it means that they are quite egoistic. They are not thinking about common welfare, about cooperation. That's a problem. And trade wars between Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan is good evidence of that. We are one economic union, but we have a problem on the borders. And I guess, first of all, we need to start to work on building more inclusive political institutions in our country. It will help to cooperate. As I said it before, we have to, with your geography, because water stream going through most of our countries, roads, in many cases are going through our country. We have to treat each other, to communicate, and the same problem with energy, water, and other nexus. We have to do that. And but we need to work on building up inclusive institutions in our countries that will help to solve this problem and will help to effectively cooperating.
Thank you. So energy, water, cooperation, security, trade institutions.
Yeah, I think I will just give two numbers. One is there is, by expert estimate, for the middle corridor to actually make it functional, at least $300 billion are needed to actually fund that work. The question is who's going to fund under the circumstances. And second is just a very simple one, to have a connectivity, internet connectivity inside Central Asia to connect the entire Central Asia, we need at least $6 billion. It's the estimate of ITU and the World Bank. Who is going to come to Central Asia and to give that large amount of money? Country by country? No one. So this could be a driving force for Central Asians to understand they don't have choice unless they create some sort of maybe a version of single market, which is in EU, because that was the need that time to actually come to harmonization and et cetera, et cetera. Central Asia is not the most popular region yet because the ecosystem is still outdated and it's not a single market, it's still the countries. And none of the investors, like large corporate investors, will come and invest in Central Asia, even in Kazakhstan, unless they will come and look at themselves as a large.
Thank you, Iqboljon. Maybe some thoughts about the strategy by 2040.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, I think one thing that we have to, and it's already being highlighted that, and there are scholarly works like our colleague Filippo Costa Brunelli talking about regional order, etc. So first of all, we have to articulate more what we call sometimes this raison de système, but regional, this raison de système, which means regional articulation of shared national interest of all countries. It is the continuation of this international order based on political independence and territorial integrity of countries and part of multilateral system. This is very important, yeah. And the second one is to be aware of that this regional order, regional cooperation in Central Asia has been and will continue to be state-driven, yeah, because states are major actors which can both positively or negatively shape this regional collective action. Yeah. So we have to be aware of these two things, yeah. And then in terms of, yeah, what are the kind of immediately priority kind of cooperation blocks which merit to be highlighted, like our colleagues already kind of quite comprehensive list of priority areas, especially I do agree with connectivity, because for connectivity also, while connectivity has become very important priority area, buzzword of discussions in and around and beyond Central Asia. But we also have like different connectivity projects now being talked about, even if like we talk about middle corridor, then there is this China, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, the railway corridor and other things. And different kind of both discourse, but also material resources like expertise capacity is being mobilized on different levels for different projects, yeah, which sometimes may create some frustrations, which may sometimes cause some kind of, competitive, perceptions saying that, or like we should focus more on that rather than on that, which means we need time for all these things to settle down, yeah. Which means we also need some cooperation between the states to make sense of this, this really kind of very dynamic connectivity issues. Yeah, so that's very important. And I think like I'm from university, yeah. So we need also which is kind of something quite tangible, and there are many ideas already being launched in different platforms like this higher education space, which means we need also this regional cooperation in higher education. Because here again, Uzbekistan is quite dynamic in increasing its higher education space. Kazakhstan is also quite now officially launched this narrative of becoming a regional hub for higher education. So it is good that the dynamism is going up. But of course, again, it can also lead to some competition, and some healthy competition is always good, but sometimes it can inhibit. And so that's why sometimes you also need some really tangible regional cooperation in this area.
Thank you so much. And with this, I just want to open up the floor for the questions from the audience. And it's already dark outside and it's not, and it's raining. And yeah, please feel free to raise a hand and ask a question. Yeah.
Maybe one general and one more specific question. Would you please elaborate on these initiatives of the last year? I mean, US plus C5, Europe, not only Germany, but Europe plus C5, China plus C5, and Russia. Actually, though there were no Russia plus C5, but it was invitation to the victory day and what actually the same. How our countries can benefit from this competing interests, to your mind. And the second question on the comment and question. On the one hand, I agree with Zuhra on all these security threats. But on the other, I'm a little bit concerned about over-securitization, because, social conflicts are rooted in the internal reasons. And what international organizations and alliances or whatever can help, in what way can help us, apart from, loans and credits and so on. I mean, on the governmental level, what is a priority in these meetings and negotiations, how to influence, how to improve this poor governance we have, and corruption, and all the challenging issues we have in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Would you like to pick up the question? And we have something like 10 to 12 minutes maybe to wrap up this panel.
Okay, I think C5 +1 is very relatively innovative platform. It's much more flexible. And somehow countries are actually taking it very seriously. They prepare, they talk. It's somehow a little bit more transparent than the rest. It gives the immediate information out. I cannot say that it's very participatory, because even with the US and the EU one, was not really much consultation happening before. And also the concern is, especially the ones which is with US, I hope the EU will not continue that they basically diminish this whole notion of civil society participation by making the next meeting on D5+1, which was continuation, and only exclusively inviting business association. And the business association, they meant this is a civil society organization, which is, well, according to legal definition. However, the business associations are never for the good of society. It's about the benefits of members of the business association. So they can be a very tricky institution in the civil society. It's not about human rights. It's not about transparency. It's about the benefit of the members of such association. And this is actually something what we see a big shift from. That you see actually the shift of the agenda human rights is not important anymore. Civil society per se, I mean, as we understand it, is not important. What they represent civil society is businesses and the business association, which makes it absolutely untransparent. And this is actually one of the concerns we have. As for that this platform is actually replicated to most of the globe, like we have Korea, India, Japan, we have now the regional ones also, like Gulf states are using the same platform, and the EU as a region. It means that it's flexible enough to be much more inclusively used. So is it having a future? I think it will have a term that, like, for now, it actually plays well until there would be a new platform coming up, which will be better than this. Also, when these countries are meeting at the, C5+1, it's about
Thank you, Zuhra. I'm afraid we don't have that much time to dive to dive deeper, unfortunately, since we have to wrap up today's panel and regional gathering. I'm so grateful to all our panelists for being here. And as we have discussed here, we have some hopes towards the multilateralism in Central Asia. We have some hopes about the regional cooperation, and we have already identified some building blocks for that. And I agree with you, and I cannot agree more that this is the young region, like the median age is like 26 or something, yeah, up to 30. And yeah, of course, the higher education is one of the building blocks, and I'm so happy that our governments have already started this collaboration on the higher education. You remember the Turkestan declaration? And yeah, just recently they came up with the idea of the strategy for the regional cooperation, and I hope that one day we can look deeper into it and maybe contribute as an expert community to this, to implementation of this document. And digitalization and cyber threats that we are facing with, and AI development, which is actually might be a good thing, and at the same time it might be a bad thing. So I think there is a lot to learn from other multilateral institutions and platforms and frameworks, and Estonia might be a good example for our region when it comes to the cyber threats or our response to the cyber attacks, and how to build overall the regulation framework around these issues. Yeah, with this, once again, thank you so much, dear panelists. Thank you for coming from different parts of the region, from Bishkek, from Dushanbe / Istanbul, from Astana. And yeah, I hope that we will continue this important conversations. We're always glad to have you here. And with that, I would like to give the floor to the Estonian ambassador to do the wrap up of today's gathering.
Thank you. Thank you, Aida, and thank you to everyone. And it's quite a difficult task to wrap up such a very diverse discussion. I would focus mainly on one item, which is that in my observation, many of the decisions made here in Central Asia are affected by economic vulnerabilities and strategic dependencies of these countries. And I think what would help a lot would be to reduce these vulnerabilities and dependencies. And this is also, in my view, something that the EU is helping as a partner. If we take some of the current big projects like the critical raw materials or digital connectivity or Trans-Caspian trade routes. So this is some kind of focus of cooperation between the European Union and Central Asia, and it would also help the countries in Central Asia to make their choices in the various multilateral organizations where you're participating. I'm actually quite impressed by how many organizations there are. I think your leaders are very busy attending all these summits of CSTO, CIS, Shanghai, BRICS Plus, and so on. It's even more, it's a bigger burden than maybe for our leaders. And I think also, if we look at Estonia's experience, we of course make our choices in which organization we invest more, and we can't afford to invest so much everywhere. We have invested heavily in the EU and NATO, and now in the recent years, we've actually started to appreciate the importance of the UN and OSCE because we have seen how these organizations are in trouble right now. And if we speak about Central Asia actors in international relations, in multilateral organizations, I would repeat something that Ambassador Intelmann said at the beginning: make your voice heard. And so in all these bodies where you have your bigger partners, but to make sure that the voice of the smaller countries is heard, and also set your standards. Don't just accept whatever is coming out of there, but set your standards and compare the outcome to your standards. And ultimately, what we have been trying to tell our partners here is, in the end, to be on the wrong side of history. Because what is happening now in Europe is there are some injustices in the making, and we still believe that the outcome in the end will be fair, and we're continuing to work for that cause. And I also believe that our partners in Central Asia are interested in that. So with that, I would thank everyone again, and it seems this is the conclusion of this event, and I hope there will be a follow-up or further discussions. For me, it was very inspiring, and I hope for you as well. Thank you.